Welcome to Love and Abuse, the show about helping you identify poisonous communication and toxic behavior. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. That's why it's important that you learn to pinpoint manipulative and controlling behavior so that you keep your power and your sanity. I'm your host, Paul Coliani. Welcome to a unique episode of Love and Abuse. It's unique because I recorded it while on video for Instagram. So I just, as of this recording, created an Instagram account for Love and Abuse. You can go to Instagram and look up the handle Love and Abuse Podcast, and you'll see a video of me recording it. And I don't know if that's interesting to you or not, but I wanted to let you know that I do have that Instagram account now, and if you want to follow that and see any updates and any quotes and personal things that I post there, you can do so. And my other Instagram account, The Overwhelmed Brain, I try to separate the podcasts and keep them in their appropriate spot. The Overwhelmed Brain is about empowering you to make decisions that are right for you and also helping you out with your relationships as well. It's personal growth and development. And this one is all about difficult relationships with anyone in your life. And emotional abuse comes up a lot, and manipulation and control and all kinds of bad behavior and toxic communication and behavior that is good for you to know and identify so that you can do something about it or not, as long as you know about it. And it's just helpful for you to know all of these things so that you can identify the behavior when it's happening, and then you have a choice, as opposed to someone being gaslighted. When the crazy making goes on in a relationship, you feel like pulling your hair out and you can't figure out why you feel like you're going crazy. And you feel like you're wrong, or you feel guilty or responsible for things that you shouldn't be responsible for, or at least partially, because the victim of emotional abuse will often feel like the person responsible for all the problems in the relationship when they're actually being convinced or brainwashed into feeling responsible for all the problems. So anyway, I want to get this episode started. Like I said, I'm pulling the audio from the video that I created on Instagram. And so if you are on Instagram and you saw this video, you may have already heard this. But if you're an audio only person, sort of like me, then you probably are hearing this for the first time. Either way, good to connect with you. And I hope you get a lot from this episode. This episode in particular is about analyzing the emotionally abusive relationship through an email that I received, which really outlined a lot of emotionally abusive behaviors that will help you identify any types of behaviors like that in your relationships as well. Again, I hope this helps. I will be back after it's done, and I'll say goodbye. Talk to you soon. I'm going to read you an email that I received, and I'm going to make comments throughout the email to help identify emotionally abusive behavior. And it can be helpful to understand the type of behavior that you are witnessing, to understand if you are experiencing any type of emotional abuse or control or manipulation, just so that once you identify it, you can do something about it, if you want to do anything about it. If you don't want to do anything about it, at least you know what it is. Hopefully everyone wants to do something about it. You don't want to stay in that type of situation, but sometimes you're kind of stuck for a while. Sometimes you don't have the options that you might need to have in order to get out of a bad situation. But let's just read this email, and I'll give you some identifying red flags that help you determine whether what's happening in your relationship is emotional abuse or not. I received this a few months ago, so I'm going to look up on my screen here and read you some stuff here. Hi, Paul. I've been listening to your podcast for a few weeks now, and your messages have hit me like a ton of bricks. I just walked away from a 2-year relationship that has been filled with physical, emotional, and verbal abuse. Your podcasts have opened my eyes to the toxic behavior of myself and my significant other. I was involved with someone who manipulated and coerced several events so he could have his cake and eat it too. During the honeymoon phase, he was wonderful. But then things took a turn when he came out and explained that he was a player and he was willing to put his cards down for me. Wow. So right away, when someone says, hey, I was a player and I'm willing to put my cards down for you, or something like that, the player part, sure, we can have a background or some history of promiscuity or, going around town and being with as many people as they wanted to be with. And that's fine. We all have a history. We all have our own relationship stuff. So now we go into the future, and hopefully we don't take anything negative from that history and bring it into our future, unless it's learnings. We want to take the learnings. If he's serious and doesn't want to be a player anymore, that's great. However, what concerns me, the red flag that comes up for me, is when he says, I was a player and I'm willing to put my cards down for you. That is a little bit of martyrdom. That is saying, you know what? I am showing you that I am bigger than that, it's great when you recognize it, but when you kind of gloat about it, there's something about that can actually be a red flag of manipulation. So the idea of saying, I'm sacrificing this for you, I'm willing to put my cards down for you, that tells me that my behavior is dependent on you being in my life, which is, I don't know if I'd call that codependent, probably is, but it's also putting a lot of pressure on the other person, that if that person doesn't show up anymore, then the other person goes back to being a player. In other words, if you base your behavior based on someone else being in your life, then you aren't really changing at all. You are changing for someone else, stopping behavior, but that means, from the way he said it, that I'm not really willing to change that, but since you're in my life, I'll change that. I don't like that part of that. I mean, when you change, it should be for you. If you look at your past and go, I did all these bad things in my past, I really want to change that about me. I'm going to work on that, whether I'm in a relationship or not. That should be the attitude. When he says, I'm going to put my cards down for you, that's a red flag. And it's also, like I said, martyrdom. I'm the martyr. I'm sacrificing for you. And he's setting her up for future hurt and pain, because he's going to be able to play this card. I'm going to use that term, card. He's going to be able to play this card over and over again and say, I made these sacrifices for you. And that comes into play later on. So that is a red flag. That's the kind of thing you look for. By itself, it could be a comment that any of one of us could make, like, you've made me change my ways. I mean, we say things like this sometimes, or we used to. And that is just another process or another component of emotional abuse that can be present. By itself, maybe not. But as we go through this email, you're going to hear other components that create a compound effect and make it more of a bad situation for this person who wrote. So let me continue here. She said, it freaked me out because I have a past history of attracting these kinds of men, and I passively let it go because I thought it was a phase. He introduced me to his friends and church members. However, there was this one person, his special lady friend, that he said that was not important because it would be a conflict of interest because she was someone he was once involved with, but now they're just friends. That's weird, a conflict of interest. I don't know why he'd use that term. Over the course of our relationship, I began to notice that it was not only her, but other women that he had past relationships with that he would check in on periodically. It's a little red flag. When you're checking in on your past exes, why are you doing that? I mean, I understand you can have exes as friends. That's not a problem. What you want to watch out for is, even that word, check in. I'm going to check in on them. That tells me that I'm leaving these breadcrumb trails so that I can stay connected to these people as my backup. So that when this relationship that we're in now doesn't work, I can go to these backups. Further along the emotional abuse spectrum, or just a plain lie, he can use these people as someone to cheat on his girlfriend with. So that's the extreme, and hopefully, I haven't read the rest of the letter yet, but hopefully that's not what happens here. But He was abusive. She already told me at the very beginning, physically, emotionally, all of these abusive ways that he is showing. But what's interesting is that she's able to tell me step by step all of these abusive flags that came up. That's important because this can happen in a relationship. You start to see flags. You start to feel something's off. Your intuition is telling you something's wrong here, but then your rationality, which lies to you a lot, says, well, maybe it's a fluke. Maybe he really is right about, him wanting to change his ways. Maybe he is right that these are just friends. But your intuition usually wins. We just don't let it win. Our intuition usually is right. We just don't want to listen to it because now we're enjoying other parts of our life and our relationship. So let's not listen to that intuition. And that's a bad idea. That's a bad idea. So let me continue on with what she says here. Yep. This began to stir up red flags, and I began to question. His rebuttal was, I come home to you. I pay your bills. So what if I have friends? It shouldn't be that big of a deal. So before I continue reading there, that's minimizing. When someone minimizes what you're feeling, and it's, they might say something like, you're too sensitive, or you're making a big deal out of this. It's a red flag. Again, we might say this outside the context of an emotionally abusive relationship. But inside the context of an emotionally abusive relationship, this is very scary because it can blow up and amplify into other things, as we're going to find out. But it's important to understand what minimizing is. It's causing you to be less sensitive to things that you should stay sensitive about. I'm going to minimize how you feel. I'm feeling concerned. You shouldn't feel concerned. I'm feeling angry about what you said. You shouldn't feel angry. I'm feeling sad. You shouldn't feel sad. Why do you feel sad? You only feel sad because of something you're dealing with. And what I'm doing over here is perfectly fine. All of this could make sense, again, logically, but emotionally, you're not connecting with the person at all. I mean, when they say things like that to minimize you, that is telling you that what you feel is wrong. That's invalidation. So you got to watch out for this invalidation and this minimizing. And if it's part of all these other components as well, you might have a bigger context of emotional abuse. So let me continue. It wasn't a big deal that he had friends, but it was in the way he presented things to me. I noticed he began to tell untruths along the way. This person whom he told me he would end the friendship with because it was a conflict of interest, he was still doing things for her behind my back. I mean, that's more than a red flag. That is just a out and out lie. And it is another component of this entire thing that we're opening up here, we're painting. When I questioned him, he became very defensive. Another red flag. Instead of saying, oh, I'm sorry that you think this is happening. I want to alleviate your fears here. Let me tell you what's happening. Or I didn't realize this was causing so much of a problem for you. I won't see her again. I'm so sorry. There's none of that. It is, I can't believe you're giving me crap about this. This isn't a sign of a loving, caring person. This is a sign of someone who wants to do what they want to do and deflect you and redirect you back to yourself by becoming angry. Because it's hard to deal with angry people, right? Someone gets angry and defensive, you're like, oh, I just don't want to deal with them. So we'll just let them be. Or we fight back and they become even more angry and defensive. And in the context of an emotional abuser, someone abusive like this, when they become defensive, it is to cover something up. It is to hide something. So keep that in mind if you didn't already know it, but that is one of the red flags. Let me see. I began to notice that he started becoming very dismissive with those things that I was not accepting of. Another sign, dismissive. Whatever. You always think that. You would think that. Dismissive is invalidation. Dismissive is minimizing. Dismissive is, this is all part of crazy making too. He's trying to gaslight / crazy make this person who wrote to me so that she feels like maybe she's seeing things wrong. This is a great email to outline the process or the sequential stepping up of emotional abusive behavior and how the toleration of that emotional abusive behavior, meaning she's staying in the relationship, it continues, her toleration continues to grow. Her resilience continues to grow. her giving him a second chance, a third chance, a fourth chance, and thinking that's a fluke and the benefit of the doubt continues to grow. It's all part of becoming more resilient to abuse. Let's continue. Let me see. Where am I? I began on this pattern of always trying to defend myself. When you find yourself defending yourself all the time, that's the other person being offensive, always bringing it back to you, redirecting to you. God, there's so much to comment on here. Sorry about that. And it turned into this snowball of obsessive behavior. I get it. And even manipulating, trying to control him through anger or fighting to make him see things my way. And you know what? It got me nowhere. Yeah, that's what happens is when you're in an emotionally abusive relationship, what you end up doing is becoming what appears to be emotional abuse itself. But what you're doing is actually mimicking the type of behavior that you're getting just to get through to the other person. So the victim of emotional abuse often ends up doing things they wouldn't normally do in the relationship because there's no other way to get their needs met. There's no other way to get through to the person. So they do the same behavior. They yell, they become defensive, they lie, they do all these other things that they don't like about themselves, and then they think they're emotionally abusive. And what ends up happening is, as the relationship continues on throughout the months and years, unfortunately years, the other person, they never change or they get worse, the emotional abuser, but you also get, quote, worse in your behavior to try to get your needs met, to try to get the love and attention that you're seeking. And you end up not seeing or not remembering the beginning of the relationship when they were emotionally abusive at first, and you start putting the blame on yourself. Like, maybe it was me. Maybe this whole time I've been emotionally abusive. Maybe I'm the problem. That's brainwashing. They're brainwashing you into believing that you're the problem. You're not the problem. In the situation I'm outlining here, you're not the problem. So just remember that as the relationship continues and grows and moves into other phases and you move in together and you get married, all of this appears to be for the victim of emotional abuse. They think it's their fault. They put the responsibility, and then you forget what happened in the beginning, or at least you minimize that yourself and you start to take it on because you're brainwashed the whole time. Let's continue. On that note, as I begin listening more in depth to your episodes, I begin to identify the manipulative behaviors he was displaying. Gaslighting, breadcrumbing, stonewalling, crazy making, all terms I talk about in my show, Love and Abuse. We got engaged to be married after a year and a half of dating, and his number one issue with me was I wouldn't submit, as he told the counselor. I'm not sure what she means by that. I began trying to fix all these negatives that he didn't like, and now I am the empty shell of myself, as you would always describe. Okay, so she said I wouldn't submit, so that maybe he was saying things that she should just submit to and accept. Like, oh, you're so sensitive, and she wouldn't submit to that. So that's what I'm going to interpret there. I'm not sure what she wouldn't submit to, but at least they went to counseling, and maybe they learned something there. I've been trying to fix all these negatives that he didn't like, and now I'm the empty shell of myself. So yes, when you're in this relationship with someone who's being abusive and lying, controlling and manipulative, and you have a codependent aspect of yourself, tendencies, you're going to want to try to fix these things. And one of the ways to fix them is being nicer. That's what happens, is that the victim of emotional abuse, okay, if I'm just nicer, okay, if I do submit, okay, if I do just accept that maybe I'm going crazy and he's right or she's right, then you start to diminish yourself in many ways, and you start to break away or chip away at your self-worth and your self-esteem and the self-trust, your decision-making ability. All of these things start to chip away, and pretty soon you're in a space that you feel like what she said. She said, empty shell of myself. I usually say a shell of your former self. So however it feels to her is absolutely correct. What she's feeling, that empty shell. Where did I go? I was this person at one time, and now I'm this person. It's all part of that cycle. When I did try to tell my friends and family on both sides, I was ignored because most thought he was a great guy. Even my father, whom had from the start not liked him, began to take his side. Oh my God, that happens a lot. You know, the emotional abuser can be very charming. Not in the relationship, well, at the beginning they are, But outside the relationship, they're always, at least these certain types of abusers are always charming, and friends and family love them. And so this is a very difficult place to be in when you're the victim of emotional abuse and you tell a friend or a family member, he said this to me. He said, you're just being too sensitive. And that one component of emotional abuse, again, outside the context of emotional abuse or a difficult relationship, is not taken as emotional abuse. It's not even taken as a bad thing. And most people will say, or a lot of people will say, oh yeah, my husband does that all the time. Or yeah, I've been known to do that myself. Because that one component isn't enough to really outline the bad behavior that's going on. And so when you can't even describe what's happening to your friends and family, you feel alone. It's part of the isolation process. I am feeling isolated from friends and family, and he or she is making nice with all these friends and family and making me look bad. So this is another part of it. Then there were other friends that thought he was a complete ASS, and but supported my decision. So that's good. She did have friends that supported her. Eventually, as the nagging and obsessing came from me, he broke it off with me by calling her special lady friend and telling her she was the one and he was leaving me. Okay, so, good thing he left, because it sounds like this person who wrote to me continued to raise her toleration, increase her resilience, and continue to be in a relationship that was definitely bad news for her and for him too, because I often say that even the emotional abuser has to be enabled somehow. How are they enabled? You stay and tolerate the bad behavior, and that creates the enablement. And so the abusive person needs someone to abuse. Don't be that person. Because as long as you stay in the relationship, you show them there's no accountability for their bad behavior. And you want to avoid that. So let's continue. I was so hurt and crushed. Oh, and plus he said, I just glossed over this. Eventually, as the nagging and obsessing came for me, he broke it off with me by calling his special lady friend and telling her that she was the one. Let's look at the very beginning where he left those breadcrumbs out for these other women. He knew that he needed a backup plan because this relationship, as all his relationships probably do, failed. And so having these backup plans made him feel better. And of course, the person he's with, they never know what they're going to get. He's just a wild card that does anything he wants. So like I said, I glossed over that, but really, you don't even need to know that's a red flag. That's just when there's other people in your partner's life and they are exes, that's not the problem. The problem becomes when it's uncomfortable for you. If they are continuing to be in contact with their exes and they're sharing an emotional connection of any sort, it can be uncomfortable. And so, what are they sharing with their ex that they aren't sharing with me? It's a taking away from the relationship. And so when you're taking away from the relationship by emotionally investing in someone else, that can be a problem. It's not always a problem. Some partners have no problem with it. But when it is a problem, it should be addressed. And the partner that's doing it should say, wow, I don't want to do that to us. I will, certainly limit my exposure with them or not contact them at all, because right now I want to put all my energy and focus into us, into this relationship. That's a healthier response, or at least it should be a conversation. It doesn't mean you have to get rid of all your ex-friends. It just means, or exes as friends, it just means that you should at least have a conversation about it instead of being dismissive and invalidating and not having a problem with it whatsoever. So she says, I was so hurt and crushed. But did I say this already? Come back with you. Oh yeah. I was so hurt and crushed, but like a woman of low self-esteem, I took him back within 3 months. This is after he came back and begged and confessed that he only said those things because he loved me. Okay. I won't even comment on that. And he made a mistake. You know what? Yeah, I won't comment on that. He said he loved her and he made a mistake. It's already easy to identify what's going on there. Over time, the relationship has been dictated by him because I was unemployed and he paid all my bills. But fast forward to 8 months ago, and he began again with this unusual behavior that he seems to have whenever she comes around. And I confronted him and I told him I didn't want to be involved with a Prince Charles, Prince Diana, Camilla Parker Bowles love triangle with this woman, special lady friend. He dismissed me again and said, no man will pay all your bills and want to be with another woman. So this, again, another part of emotional abuse, especially during a breakup or a fear of a breakup, is the emotional abuser will say, you'll never get someone like me. You'll never get someone that will do this for you. You've gotten fat, you've gotten ugly, and you're hard to live with, and you always nag. They're going to put you down. Have you refocused, not on them, but back onto yourself? Redirect the energy back to you so that you have to now bathe in your own misery and think about all the stuff that maybe, quote, he or she is right about. And they're not. They're not right about that. They're just forcing you to be in a space where you have to focus on yourself and not them. So just watch out for that too. You'll never get someone like me. That kind of verbiage is not healthy at all. And again, martyrdom and I'm the best and you should follow me and be with me. It's also narcissistic. I mean, I haven't even mentioned narcissism, but a lot of this is narcissism here. I was so hurt. Where was I? Okay, here I am. I have found emails that they share. I have even spoken with her, and she boldly confessed to me that they were friends with a deep bond, and she plans on continuing that with him. Oh my God. Yeah, that's pathetic. I mean, you reach out to an ex, and they have a deep bond. And instead of saying, you know what, I don't want to get in between you guys, I certainly don't want to interfere with the relationship that you're building. So I will stay out of your lives. That would be a healthier response. This is someone who wants what she wants. It's almost like she knows that she's the other woman and she wants to keep that status. Not good. He told me otherwise, but my intuition would not allow me to believe it. So fast forward, he began telling me how selfish I was. Again, let's redirect the focus back on her. I didn't respect his wishes as a man. He's playing the victim. And that I had to get a job and take care of myself. Get her out of the picture. If I want to see him or spend time with him, I need to help out and pay for stuff because I haven't shown any reciprocity in the relationship. So I don't know their situation. If he's paying all the bills and he thinks that by paying the bills, he can go cheat and be with anyone he wants, then that's lopsided. That's unhealthy. And sure, it's nice to have an equal partnership where both people pay the bills, but don't use that as a threat to do anything you want. That is financial abuse. That is isolation. That is so much abuse wrapped up into this relationship. And he's got all the power. You know, if you're in a relationship where one person doesn't bring in the income and the other person does, the person that does has no right to be abusive to the person not bringing in the income, because income should not define abuse. Income or the amount of income that you bring in should not define how much you love each other or support each other, because income isn't the only way you support each other. It's about being loving and caring and supporting the other person's happiness so that you're both giving emotionally into the relationship. And income is a component of a relationship, but don't use it as a weapon. You don't want to do that. You want to have conversations about it. If you really wanted her to invest in the relationship or bring in an income, financially, or bring in an income, then you have that conversation, but don't use it as a threat saying, well, since you don't bring any income in, I'm going to go do anything I want. That's not a relationship. That is one person dominating and controlling. And that's bad news. He informed me that he is pissed at me for being an ungrateful and selfish woman because I wouldn't allow him to have his friends. Again, redirecting back to her. You're ungrateful. You're selfish. I should have any friend I want. And basically what he's saying is, I want my girlfriends. I want to be able to have sex with these other people. I'm not sure. I don't know if that happened, but that's what I hear. I want to have these opportunities because when we're having a bad time, I want to be able to share with these other people. Again, that's what I hear. He keeps throwing up in my face all the stuff that he has done for me and how ungrateful I am for not respecting him. Playing the victim again. So I decided that we should attend this couples retreat to see if we could save our relationship. While in a session, he received a phone call from another ex that he has a business with. I made a comment about him taking the phone call while we were working on us, and he became defensive again and shut down and didn't speak to me the remainder of the day. This is at a couples retreat. You're supposed to be working on yourselves and each other. And because he said my attitude was uncalled for, now he's being the parent to the child. If you introduce a parent and child relationship into your relationship where one person acts like the parent who needs to discipline and guide and mentor the child, which is your partner, is supposed to be an equal, another unhealthy abusive pattern. I should respect their relationship because the money he makes affords me to live the life that I have. So now he's using money again to dominate, to control. I was so hurt, I attacked him. I didn't see this coming. Well, it didn't get me anywhere because now he's going on a canoeing trip, and guess who's going to be there? He told me he wasn't going to attend, but based on my behavior from the couple's weekend, he decided to attend the trip. And yes, she may be there and doesn't want any BS out of me regarding the trip or his business relationship with the other woman. So we're verging on full-blown narcissism here. I don't care about you. It doesn't matter. You have the problem with my life. I don't have a problem with this relationship. I like it the way I like it, and I'm going to do anything I want. I don't care about you. I have no empathy for you. I'm not worried about what you think. So that's what I'm getting. Let me see what this other woman also. This other woman also confessed that she's still in love with him. All right. He has given me the silent treatment most of the last 6 months, and he talks down to me. I got to look over the camera here. He talks down to me as if I know nothing. So last night I decided, this is the continuing par for the course. So last night I decided it was enough, and I told him to go F himself, and I blocked all the communication with him, and I packed all his things, and they are waiting at my back door. He can get them at his convenience, and I am no longer allowing this relationship to have a hold on me any longer. Yes, excellent. He had me believe that I couldn't do anything for myself, that I couldn't think for myself, and if I tried to speak up for myself, he made me feel so very small. I'm taking the necessary steps to get myself back into the land of the living, but it also showed me that I have a lot of unresolved issues, toxic negative behaviors from my past that are impeding me from having a healthy relationship with others. And I really want to grow into the dynamic, positive, purpose-filled person I know I was created to be. Thank you for the platform that you have created and for sharing your story. On a positive note, I did accept the challenge and I was able to land a job, and I'll be purchasing the Mean Workbook. I'm not sure what challenge she's referring to, but all I can say is yes. You get to this point where you've had enough. And sometimes that's what it takes. Congratulations, the person who wrote this letter. You did it. That's a huge step into an abyss that you have no idea what's on the other side. It's a giant leap of faith sometimes. Sometimes you know that you're getting away from abuse and it doesn't matter where you land. That's kind of my take. I'd rather be miserable and alone, if that's what it's going to take, to be in an abusive relationship where I know I'll be miserable trying to defend myself and trying to deal with this, whatever it is, narcissistic, sociopathic, psychopath, who knows? I want to get away from that toxic behavior, deal with my own toxicity. I have to detoxify here. I have to get into a better space. I have to heal from whatever I'm carrying around that caused me to stay in a relationship like this for so long. So congratulations. The person who wrote this email, anyone in a relationship like that or has been in a relationship like that was able to get out, congratulations. It is a process. It's a step-by-step process. If you're in a relationship like this right now, you may not be ready to jump ship. You may not be ready to just go and then have all your resources accessible. And you may not be emotionally there as well. You might have to have a breakdown. You might have to get to that point where enough is enough. And sometimes it does take picking away at you and chipping away at your sense of self, your sense of identity, before you finally are able to reach a state where there's nowhere to go but up. Because it's like, I've used the analogy of diving into the deep end of a swimming pool. You go further and further down. You're starting to lose your breath. I mean, you're holding your breath, so you're starting to need to breathe shortly. And it's getting deeper and the pressure's getting stronger. It's a really deep swimming pool. And you don't know if you can survive. And finally, you just can't hold it anymore. You have to breathe. And then you hit the bottom. And the bottom is a great place to hit because it's an awesome push-off point. So sometimes you have to hit that bottom to push yourself back up and swim very fast to the top. Doesn't always go fast, but that's the part of the healing journey. You push back up. She reached bottom. She reached her breaking point. It was that threshold where she finally said, enough's enough. And she pushed back up. So I'm proud of you, whoever wrote this. Not that you need to hear that from me, but I'm happy to read a message like this and that you were able to write all of the components that you went through so that I could share it with people listening and watching right now. You that might have been in a situation like this, might be in a situation like this, or might run into a situation like this. If you are seeing these signs and all these red flags, they all might make up a bigger picture of emotional abuse, or at least a very difficult relationship that might not be worth investing in. Or at least, like she did, she tried to go to counseling. See someone, talk to someone, find out if things can get better. And if they can't, then you might have to invest in yourself more, not so much in what's happening out there. That means different things to different people. But thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Good to connect with you today. I'll talk to you again soon. Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Love and Abuse. And because you couldn't see it, if you were just listening to this and not watching, you would notice that I laughed a few times. And I want you to know that I was laughing because it was just so ridiculous. Not what she was saying, but what he thought that he could get away with. What he thought were normal things to say, and they weren't. Some people think that unhealthy, toxic behavior is normal and loving and caring, and it's not. And I want to be really careful about how I talk about people because I know that there are people listening that probably have been emotionally abusive or are now and are trying to learn how to be better. So I'm not laughing at you. I'm not laughing at anyone. And especially, I'm probably laughing at myself because in my past, I could have been this way. I could have been some of the ways I described today. And so you see this behavior now after you heal from it, and you just realize how toxic it is. And I wonder how it ever could work on someone to keep someone in your life when you say just such awful things. And so that's what I look for, and that's what I listen for. And when I was reading the email, that's what I read into, is that these really awful things that he was doing and saying to the person who wrote the email, some of it was just over the top. And it was filled with so much disdain and lack of care that it just didn't make any sense. And this is often what happens, is that some people can be so downright selfish that the things they say and do don't really make any sense. They don't really kind of follow logic. The behavior is just odd. And when it's that odd, you sometimes walk away scratching your head and wonder what just happened, which can also be part of the manipulation. If they are doing confusing, erratic, or just plain weird behavior, that also keeps them from being accountable. That also keeps you busy trying to figure them out. As long as you're continuing to guess and figure things out, they stay ahead and they continue doing what they're doing. So I just wanted to kind of address that so that it makes sense to you, even when they don't make sense. Because you need to make sense of it in order to get through it, in order to make decisions based on knowledge. I want you to have that knowledge. Thanks again for joining me today. Share this with others that might benefit. Love and Abuse is the official podcast of the Mean Workbook, an assessment and healing guide for difficult relationships. If you want to pinpoint the exact behaviors causing difficulties in your relationship, including identifying all the signs of possible emotional abuse, head over to loveandabuse.com. And if you're in a relationship where you do have difficulties and you know the other person wants to work on this stuff with you, you can even take the 200-point assessment in the workbook together. And you might be surprised what you find out, and there might be some tension afterward, like an email that I got recently that they said, oh, we took the test together and wow, all hell broke loose for a week, but we're on the mend. And so I think it's great when you can do it together if you have a partner that's willing to face themselves. It is challenging, but it's worth it to reveal what's happening in the relationship. And sometimes for the first time, you don't even realize it until you go through something like this. Again, head over to loveandabuse.com. This show exists to remind you that you are not alone and you are not going crazy. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. You deserve honesty and sincerity. You deserve to be treated as worthy and significant because you are. We'll talk again soon.